Hello and welcome back to Wrongmar. In today's maths lesson, we're taking a look at fractions again. Today, we're going to be working with tenths. Our goal for today's lesson is to identify, use, and count in tenths. But first, can you remember what a fraction is? We've been talking about them for the last 2 days, but I want to make sure you remember what it actually means when we're talking about fractions. Pause the video and write down what that word fraction means. Well, you might remember that a fraction is part of a whole number, a whole shape, or a whole set. The important word there is part. That's what makes a fraction a fraction. Which one of these 3 boxes down below does not show a fraction? Pause the video and see if you can figure out which one it is. Well, remember, a fraction is a part of a whole number, shape, or set, and this picture here does not show a part. Instead, it shows the whole thing. A whole circle, a whole bar, and a whole set of 4 sweets. So this is not a fraction. This is a whole. Fractions are smaller than a whole number, shape, or set of objects. So if this one here is one whole, what about the other 2 boxes? What fraction is shown in these boxes? Pause the video and write the answer down. Well, the first box shows 1/4. 1 piece out of 4 is shaded or squared. The second box shows 3/4. 3 pieces out of 4 is shaded or squared. Now you probably remember that the numbers in a fraction give us all the information we need to work with it. The number on the top tells us how many parts we have shaded, or how many items from the set we've taken. This is called the numerator. Below the line, we have the denominator. This tells us how many parts there are altogether. So you can see in the set over here on the left side, we can see that the rectangle, the circle, and the set of sweets have all been broken into 4 equal parts. That's the denominator, the 4 in our fraction. And we can see that 3 of those parts have been shaded or marked. That's our numerator, the top number. Today, we're going to be working with tenths. Do you think that 1/10 would be larger or smaller than 1/2? Pause the video and write down your answer. Well, imagine this big long rectangle is one whole. It can be one whole anything. One whole chocolate bar, one whole unit. Doesn't really matter. If we were to divide this whole into 10 parts, what fraction would each part be? Pause the video and write down your answer. Well, if we divided it into 10 equal parts, then each part would be 1/10. This is how we write 1/10. 1 part out of 10 equal parts. Our numerator is 1 and our denominator is 10. Let's take a look at how we would write and represent different amounts of tenths. This is what 1/10 would look like. So, if you said that 1/10 is smaller than 1/2 earlier on in the lesson, you're absolutely correct. You can see that 1/10 is quite small in this whole unit. The way we write 1/10 is like this. Numerator of 1, a line, and then a denominator of 10. Remember, the numerator, the number 1, tells us how many shaded parts we have. The denominator, down below the line, tells us how many parts there are in total. What do you think 2/10 would look like on this picture and also as a fraction? Pause the video and write down what you think. Well, this is what 2/10 would look like on the picture, and this is what it would look like as a fraction. Remember, the 2 in the numerator above the line tells us how many shaded parts we have. That's why there's 2 dark blue shaded parts in our whole unit. Down below the line, we have our denominator of 10 because that's how many equal parts there are in total. What do you think 3/10 would look like? Pause the video and write down what it would look like as a fraction and also what it would look like on this picture. Well, this is what 3/10 would look like. On the picture, it's got 3 shaded boxes out of 10, and as a fraction, it's a 3/10. Can you remember what the 3 means and what the 10 means? And can you remember the special names for the top number and the bottom number in a fraction? Pause the video and see if you can remember. Did you remember? The top number is called the numerator. This part tells us how many shaded pieces we have. The bottom part is called the denominator. That's the part that tells us how many equal groups this has been split into. Hopefully you're getting the hang of these now, and this next one will be easy for you. What do you think 4/10 would look like on a picture and also written as a fraction? Pause the video and write it down. Here is what 4/10 would look like. 4 shaded boxes out of 10 on the picture and a 4/10 as a written fraction. What do you notice about the denominator in all of these fractions? Pause the video and write down what you've noticed. Well, you've probably noticed that the denominator has stayed the same because the shape has always been broken into 10 equal parts. That's what makes a tenth a tenth. This is what 5/10 would look like. You might notice that half of the shape has been shaded. So actually 5/10 is the same or equivalent to 1/2. We saw this before when we were looking at quarters, and we realized that 2/4 was equal to 1/2. This is what the rest of the 10th fractions look like. 6/10, 7/10, 8/10, and 9/10. If I was to shade in the last box on that 9/10 fraction, what fraction would we have then? Pause the video and write down an answer. Well, we would have 10/10, and it would look like this. But the thing about 10/10 is, it's not a fraction. Remember, a fraction is a part of a whole unit, but this is one whole unit. The full picture is coloured in, and we have all of the parts out of 10. We actually can write it as a whole number, 1. If the numerator and the denominator, that's the top and the bottom number of the fraction, are the same, it's always one whole number, 1. So we've shown fractions written down, and we've also shown them on a picture, but we can show tenths on the number line as well, between the number 0 and the number 1 for one whole. This is what it would look like. There's a few missing tenth fractions though. Can you pause the video and see if you can figure out what's missing from the number line? Well, how did you get on? Here's what you should have got. 2/10, 5/10, and 7/10. If I took away all of the numbers and just left 0 and 1 whole, can you figure out what value would be at this point, and this point? Remember, we're still talking about tenths here. Pause the video and see if you can figure out what the answers would be. Well, how did you get on? That was a little bit more difficult. So at this point, we should have 2/10. At this point, we would have 5/10. And at this point, we would have 9/10. Did you get them all? So just before I let you go and practice those tenths, my very irritating sister is back again to question my fraction knowledge. She says that this shape is divided into tenths. Do you agree or disagree with her? Pause the video and write down a reason why she's either right or a reason why she's wrong. Well, my sister is absolutely wrong on this one. It is divided into 10 parts, but they're not tenths. Because remember, all the parts need to be equal in size for them to be tenths. That's one of our very important fraction rules we learnt in a previous lesson. So our wall for today's lesson was to identify, use and count in tenths. You're ready to try some practice activities down below. That's all we have time for today. Until next time, take care.